And today's guests are Jonathan Mozenter and Rachael Fusting, who are inspiring change agents, helping people be one with their soul by managing mind and energy, and relationship alchemists, helping people calling deeper love for themselves, their connections, and the world. Hi, guys. Where are you calling from?
We're in Colorado, in the Boulder area, Longmont, Colorado.
Brilliant.
The Rocky Mountains.
Beautiful place. Now, can you tell me something, each one go in turn, that you're both good at and that just drips out of you, a passion?
Passion.
Yeah, actually, one of my biggest passions is solving complicated problems that bring happiness to other people and myself. But I've long liked to solve problems, and I've always been happy. Like, I'm a math guy, and then my parents were like social workers, and I got into like psychology, and I've always just had this passion of how can I help myself and my fellow brothers and sisters, make the most of their life.
Beautiful. And how about you, Rachael?
I'm really passionate about self-work and self-discovery, and have experimented with dozens of different modalities that accomplish that. So really expanding the language of how we talk about the human and giving myself an ability to plug into a bunch of different kinds of cultures, language around how to speak to self-construct and self-image. And
Wow, interesting stuff. So I've got a bit more on you guys in a moment, but to get straight to the inspiration, again, each of you, who is your biggest inspiration and why?
There's a lot of inspirations, but I tend to be drawn to people who are like really into bringing change to the world and bringing the most of their gifts. Right now, I'll pick my teacher. I have a lot of mentors, and I could have picked a lot of them. One of them is Donnie Epstein, and he's like super gung-ho about bringing what he's bringing into the world, and he's like all in, and he's inspiring other souls about how to raise their energy, and he's been doing it for his whole life, and he's a man of action and integrity, and he's bringing high energy to the planet, and I think more people should know about his work. He's really doing a lot of epic stuff.
Brilliant, thanks. So can you tell us a bit more about his work?
Sure. So Donnie Epstein started as a chiropractor, and he discovered a new kind of chiropractic where you're not physically adjusting the bones. He's actually noticed, like, he started working with the spine, with a nervous system in the spine. So he actually works with it, and he found a new way to interact with it with like soft touches. And he started connecting with like transpersonal. So he started realizing there are like different areas of growth people are going through, or people using different types of intelligences, which I can talk about more later. And he started combining the transpersonal and the physical. And then he started to realize that he can take this technology and give it to people who are not chiropractors to really energize their life and connect more with higher energies. And that's one of the things that Rachael and I is really passionate about, is how to take, some people think transpersonal or connecting to higher sources is kind of wooey, but we actually see it as very rational and we have very practical steps to help people kind of access that. And Donnie Epstein is one of many of the people we leverage to help people access their own higher self. Our goal is to help everyone be their own, connect to their own higher energy, so they can be their own kind of guru and master and guide themselves. That's our passion.
Yes, it's a great path. And how about you, Rachael?
I have, a lot of people that inspire me, but in broader categories, I'm really inspired by psychics and readers who are just really willing to lean fully into their clarity of knowing, and in ways that aren't validated by mainstream society, just be with the truth within them often enough to build that self-trust and that reliable connection. I think that's super admirable. It like takes so much self-belief. And I'm also a really big fan and get really inspired by people that write oracle decks. because they're just bringing so much wisdom to the world and encoding dozens of cards worth of it, and then releasing multiple decks a decade. It's like, just those people are just bringing in so much wisdom. So
Thank you for that. That's the
yeah.
beautiful inspiration. So a little bit on each of you. Jonathan, I know that you started out studying psychology, and then you went on to organizational behavior and change management, and you worked or are still working professionally helping organizations with that. But then you've added a more esoteric element, as you've alluded to there, where you're helping people really change and transform their lives. And Rachel, you were working on web content at Hewlett Packard, and then you now moved towards more flow art, which I had to Google because I didn't know what that was, I'm afraid. So you can tell us a little bit about that. And
Yes.
and then, you're basically helping people ground physically and integrate some of their past traumas. And you had a great stint at the Cincinnati Circus, where you kind of got to test some of your newer techniques. So yeah, they're quite interesting stories. Can you each tell us, what's inspired you along any of those paths?
Go for it, yeah.
Some of what you were describing is like, I knew when I went to college that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what the calling was yet. And I was still holding really open relationship with what might inspire me. It took me a while to find that spark of passion. And I found that with divination, truly, but also with flow arts. And that's why I kind of identify as like this space-time priestess, right? Because the element of space is knowing exactly where you are in your physical body. And so that's very fueled by flow arts, because you're dancing with a prop. So you have both your own body and what is without you. And so you're really gauging exactly where in space you are and coming really here. And then the divination, it takes a temperature of the past and the potential futures, and it brings you into the present of the now through a sort of synchronicity or inspired event that brings greater clarity of where your choice point is in co-creating with reality. And so that brings you into the now. And so when we get into the here and now, we're present. And so those were the two things that really sparked my inner flame alive when I had come from a past of being more disassociated, like reading books instead of like participating in reality, and really grounded me into like participating in life more fully and with more joy.
Wow, so that's great that it worked, because I think I'm probably more near the beginning of the journey of trying to get a bit more into my body and out of my head. So yeah, it sounds like a good technique. I need to try out.
Cool.
Yeah, so talk a bit about inspiration and career, because seems to be around like your question was asking. I thought of two kind of particular times. So one is I was working in psychology. I was working in a group home with emotionally disturbed kids, and I was successful with that job, but I was working with a population that was pretty wounded, and these were kids that had such a troubled life that they couldn't even be with their family. And I started to look at the systems and how much impact that was having. So I was like, sure, I'm good at this job, but these kids are so kind of damaged. Like, how much impact am I really having on the world? And I was also looking at the mental health system and how much that was influencing things. And that got me interested in something I didn't even know that existed, this idea of organizational psychology, organizational development, something called change management. But it's about how can you look at the systems? It includes both like structure, the systems of like an organization, but also looks at like the structures within people. So got me thinking something called systems thinking and how to think is more systematic. And I started interviewing people in that domain, and I was really inspired by the work that they were doing and that how they were working with leaders, and it could be applied to any kind of. Sometimes people associate that with just corporations, but really I learned it's a body of knowledge of just helping people work together more in alignment. So everyone's needs are getting met. It's a whole set of skills. And so I got so inspired by that. I ended up just diving in, deciding this is what I want to do. And I put like all my energy, and most of my mid-20s were spent. I got like an MBA focused on organizational development, and I started a community for people interested in organizational development. And we got together and just taught each other, because it was part of organizational development training. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was I kind of got to a point later in my life, maybe 15 years later, where I felt like Rachael, I felt like I was meant to be an entrepreneur, but I was really stuck and I couldn't make that part of my life kind of happen. And I decided to just put all my cards into like figuring out why I was stuck. And I got into meditation, a Tibetan meditation called Ma Mudra. It's a Dzogchen. It's part of the Vajrayana tradition. And there's a guy named Dan Brown, and he's someone else who also inspires me. And he brings together this Tibetan stuff and psychology and hypnosis and like a whole bunch of different techniques. And basically what it showed me was like, how do you actually master the traps of the mind? This is way beyond anything I learned in psychology, organizational development. This is hardcore Buddha training. What does it actually mean to be a Buddha? A lot of people here like hear the Buddha icon, but I don't think that many people actually know, like literally on a blow by blow, what it actually means and what it actually looks like. But this class I took with him actually showed you the whole process. I got super inspired, and I was like, whoa, imagine if everybody had this information, we could really have a better world where everyone's being their best self. So that was another thing that really inspired me.
Wow, that's quite a journey. Now, a foundation, I think you both alluded to, is this being present, which I've definitely read myself about and I've had mixed success with. But could you explain why you believe that's such a foundational thing?
Go for it.
Yeah, just from my own experience, when I was becoming more present, I knew what sight did, what hearing did, what smell did. But when I became present and I actually dropped into the body sensation and was with that data directly instead of from outside of my body, like in the larger auric field, I realized that my vision is, in a sense, my attention and my body communicating its desires with me. And I hadn't ever really related to vision on that direct of a feedback level. And what I'm hearing, there's a reason my selective hearing might choose to prioritize a certain fragment of conversation in the distance, And so those levels of presence that true presence clicks us into pulls up so much more data in the body. And we can be in the observer's mind without being that directly connected into the body. And the observer's mind is very valuable, but there's a level of lived kinesthetic data that comes through that like almost makes people appear psychic, because there's a part of them that's bodily that knows things. And that felt sense that can be reliable when you're fully connected to your body. Like when you're disconnected from your body and you're not fully present yet, the felt sense can feel like it's like kind of like sucking you in, or down. But when you're always in your body, it's giving you very live feedback on how it feels about everything that's happening. And so a lot of people that don't really have a connection to what inspires them yet, they don't have enough live feedback going on to really get the heck yeses from life. Like their sensory input is muted by that disconnection from that lack of presence. So that's really why it's one of the fundamentals to calling in this ability to determine, what we could just say yes to and what really lights us up.
Yes. Wow. So does that really inspire getting a bit more present? You're just given massive motivation for that. So I'm going to take this opportunity because listened to one of your other interviews, and I learned so much in the first 25 minutes. I've made loads of notes and tried to summarize them. And I'd like to just read a little bit of that out and then get you to comment on that to save a bit of time on all the things that I learned. So I'm guessing this principally for people who are similar to me and, are a bit maybe entrenched in some heavy patterns, emotions and a bit of stuck habits. So the first thing, I've numbered these. So the first thing, there's got to be a bit of a sense that you might be aware that you might be entrenched in some habits that aren't best for your life. I think that's got to be the number one starting point. And if you're not in that space, that's fine. So it's not for everybody. Number two, then be open that there might be a possible reason for being in that state. And that may be trapped emotions and patterns from the past or other reasons that maybe been a suck of energy to you to be repressed. You're maybe trying to avoid things, and basically ends up being a lack of mental space and a kind of heavy identification with thoughts and emotions. So there's many modalities that can help with that, but there seems to be a general agreement on a few main principles that you alluded to on your previous interview that I listened to, is having this emotional availability or emotional intelligence, which is kind of turning towards and feeling the emotions that might be trapped and getting a bit more space and perspective around them, can really help potentially release a bit more present moment awareness and getting into your body. I've summarized what I learned up to now so far.
Okay. Could I'd like to everything. I'd like to talk about why that dynamic happens. There's basically the mind, as we kind of evolve, is like taking in and digesting experience until we get to some experiences where we make up a story that this is too intense. Whatever this feelings that are happening on, I can't handle it. The mind makes up a story that I can't handle it. And what happens is then they stop digesting that experience and they disassociate and they make up a new way of coping, because the old way of straight digestion is not working. Now, what makes someone a Buddha is that they're always digesting their experience in every moment, and some other qualities, but that's one of the important parts. And so what happens is people create these things that I like to call egoic defense mechanisms. Thank you. That it's kind of like a mechanism that like protects this like sense of self that, some information you can't handle. And so what happens is then you start running this egoic defense mechanism over and over as a way of being, and you're no longer your pure soul anymore. And that's kind of these habits. Everybody has these unless they've really done a lot of work and become a full Buddha. And that's a really deep process. And so the process is of transcending that is to, when we make these, basically we're in a helpless kind of like, we're in these kind of traumatic places, we feel helpless, and we make up stories about ourselves and reality that are negative. And the only ways to really transcend those things is to actually feel those emotions. And in order to feel those emotions, sometimes you have to get in different states. You have to start to convince. You can use things like meditation or alter states or breath work, and a lot of other techniques, but basically to start to feel those emotions that you weren't able to feel. But also you want to change the story. So you need to identify the decrees that you made, the negative decrees, and kind of reprogram your mind. And this energy also traps itself on multiple layers. So we just talked about like the mental layer, but it's also trapped in our physical bodies and different layers of subtle things. So there's different, that's why Rachael and I are so interested in multiple modalities, is to really liberate yourself from all that trapped energy. You really have to deal with the different layers of subtle and physical and mental and emotional. And there are different techniques that get at each of them. And so what we're passionate about is kind of how can we look at the different techniques and kind of make it simpler and faster. So one of the things that both of us are joining forces on
Yeah.
in our business. Go ahead, Rachel.
And that's why we also like to make modality recommendations for people and really get an attunement to where is the trapped energy in their field and match them with a path that's really going to allow them to self-nourish based on our cross comparisons of all the things that we've tried and what parts of us we felt them activating or challenging. And that's a really like a quick way of, because a lot of times, for example, people that have depression, they get into this mainstream linear path of taking medication and it kind of makes them feel better, but it also disassociates them a little bit. And really what's wrong is an energetic thing. And once they pull it out of their energetic body, they have more availability to breathe and their emotions stop feeling as overwhelming. And so it was treated as a mental or emotional thing, but it can be bigger than that. And that's why you get some people that have tried a bunch of different ways of healing themselves. And then, one day they go to acupuncture and it all changes, because these different modalities all target very specific maladies, and you can approach plenty of them with more than one modality, but those modalities speak to different layers of our being.
That's a great way.
I wanted to, if it's okay, I just want to answer your about presence. So Rachel was pointing out how kind of pure presence allows us to tap into our kind of the knowledge that we have in our bodies, our nervous system. The subconscious is more intelligent than the conscious, and that's one of the main things we help people access. But additionally, I want to talk about how just being present just allows you to have more access to information. These defense mechanisms create like chatty projections and sometimes create the mind not wanting to stay, cause a lot of distraction in our mind. And so you're using a lot of energy to manage these suppressed emotions. When you actually liberate that energy, then you're no longer running these programs, or while you're doing it, they're lessened. So like you might do some of this work and you notice over time that these programs are less and less and less. And then you have more bandwidth, you have more energy to be radically present. So you're taking in more information in the present moment, not only within your body, but where is it? If some people may have heard of the term of non-duality, or the field, like this field of awareness. So you can feel into other people's fields and the environment and taking that information. And there's certain pith instructions that open yourself up to connecting to everything, which I learned in meditation. But we're way more powerful and capable than we think we are. And so when you do this kind of work, you liberate the energy and you have the new skills to have more capacity to do some of these more, first of all, just radically be with people and yourself and your soul and just live your life. That's already beneficial without even talking about like more esoteric stuff. But
that's
higher, just need some attention.
So that's thanks for corroborating my initial learnings. But and there were two final bits of what I learned from what I listened to you say previously. A bit on meditation, a bit on this emotional availability. So because the reason I'm digging down into this is because I realize there are people out there when you meet them are more in themselves and a calm presence certainly than I am, and I've decided now I would like to do that, and I'm trying to give myself a bank of inspiration on why I should stick with this that might be quite a lengthy journey of discovery and work. But in addition to what you've just said now, you also said feeling into these possibly uncomfortable emotions as they come up and trying to learn more from them, and what's here and now, what might be classed as an imperfect self, because oftentimes we want ourselves to be perfect. But doing all of that, it can release energy because you're using so much energy to suppress these things. So that's one benefit. So I'm trying to give myself a span of benefits. It can help you to have more emotional breakthroughs. I love this term you use, wisdom bombs. There's deep wisdom potentially hidden in these ancient emotions that why not look at them as teachers? I mean, that's a nice way that I've not thought about looking at emotions before, to try and, turn towards them. Doing this stuff opens up possibilities that you didn't even know were possible. It kind of gives you a new perspective, which in turn helps break the deeper habits. And yeah, this a well-known one is, greatness can be on the other side of something that is currently just outside of your comfort zone. So, it may be worth feeling these things a little bit more than what you're doing. Is there any, so this, emotional availability piece, is there anything else specifically on that?
In alignment with what you were just saying, when we go back and look into those wounds, those are actually the birth point of our gifts. Because in that point that we touched a huge emotional availability around that kind of pain. And so when we have the pain part of the spectrum mapped, we can experience a further part into like the pleasure side of that map, essentially. Like, for example, if one of my childhood wounds made me unbearably shy, if I overcome that, I have a huge potential as a speaker, right? Because I know how it feels to be on the other end. I can teach people how to overcome those same shynesses and limitations within them. And so part of what we love to do when we look back into these wounds is look at them as latent gifts. And what is the world giving you a special availability to be good at? And I think that's kind of one of the lesser known benefits of doing this kind of work is those coping skills formed certain uniquenesses in who we are, and that created certain gifts. So it's really all connected. There's a lot of things that can come out of it.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on that. This gifts or superpowers. So Rachel and I have been discovering is, so for example, I'll just talk to personally about my own kind of wound. And I had a lot of wounding around it being not safe to feel at all. So I got very disassociated, just like a series of kind of traumas for like being bullied, for like not crying, or a lot of other little things. But the point I want to make out is that I got at some point in my life, I literally decided that like I had a moment where the bullying got too much and people's calling me a crybaby. I was like, I don't feel like really humiliated. I just met a moment where I was like, I don't ever want to have this happen again. And I literally changed my entire being in that moment. And I created this really defense mechanism of like, I'm going to outthink my emotions so I don't like emote or get humiliated. So I spent all this time doing these mental gymnastics. So I didn't really feel anything that could hurt my feelings. Now, speaking of the gift part, it made me like really disassociated and even more like heady. And so the gift in there was I actually learned there are some benefits to being really disassociated. You can be more objective. You're not getting lost in kind of like your emotional baggage, and I get like more precise, and like it helped bring up my analytical abilities, and so that became like a superpower. Now, something else that Rachel and I is also discovering is that there's actually a second wave of superpowers that come with people who do this really deep work. So the first wave is actually starting to see from your wounding how it gave you some sort of series of either one superpower or a series of superpowers. But the second wave is like when you start to get to the point where I got to a point where I was like, all right, this disassociation thing is really affecting my life. It was really in my head, and it wasn't in my heart, and it wasn't in my body, and it was affecting my love life, ability to have the deep passionate love that I wanted. And I was also like trying to do like a million different things instead of like just focusing. And that's what led me to the second journey of like of mastering my mind. in the Buddhist kind of meditations, and that kind of then showed me other techniques, and that led to this process of trying to let go of the part of the defense mechanism that's no longer serving. Actually, not only did I let that go, but then I gained all these other wisdom and knowledge on that path that I not only can use myself, but I'm here to share, like knowledge of like how language affects everything, and the knowledge of energy, and knowledge of all these different modalities. And so that's one of the things that Rachael and I is really passionate about, working with people who's being able to get the pureness of their first superpower, but also gain their second level of superpowers, and in service of this great transformation that's going on today. That's what's really
yeah, great explanation. It feels great to be part of that. The last bit I didn't want to miss, giving to listeners, is kind of on an approach to meditation, not the specific type of meditation, because if people are a bit like me, they might have tried a bit of meditation, a bit of reading some mindfulness stuff, and then a bit of energy healing stuff, and they tried lots of bits and bobs without it totally hitting the road. But what you did say on your previous interview is that when you started to meditate, you weren't in a state to benefit from meditation. So you actually went out, even did some exercise or a cold shower or whatever works for people before the meditation. And with that higher energy, to lift your energy up, then you have your better thoughts and your better ideas that you bring into the start of the meditation, that higher energy state. And that sounds as though is what kicks you off to getting some benefits out of meditating. So that sounds a really good, bit of knowledge for people who might have tried and didn't get anywhere. Is there anything else you can add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was literally ADD. I was taking ADD medication, and meditation was extremely difficult for me. And even after taking like this advanced class, I was like, this is so hard and I hate it. There's a lot of parts to the meditation I learned, but the concentration, you got to kind of get your mind a little bit concentration before you can do this deeper level of insight practice. And I was really terrible at the concentration. And then I realized that like if I did this intense, I was doing some really intense exercises. I was doing like P90X and like some really running on a treadmill for like an hour, like really getting my energy up, and showers, like a long hot shower relaxes me. So not only like this idea of getting energy up, but also relaxing the body. And then I could do it a little bit. Like I really was sucked at it. I want to point out, like I really worked at this. So there's like another piece that tripped within me that now there's like a determination there. I took me till I was like 40 before I was ready for this. And there was like something inside of me that was like, enough of this, like I'm sick of being stuck. So for those people who's like beating themselves up about being stuck in a pattern that's not working for you, guess what? Eventually what happens is you have that pattern long enough that you just get and you feel the pain of that pattern, that you like, I can't do this anymore. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to go. And that's a good place to be. So if you're beating yourself up over bad patterns, it ultimately allow yourself to feel that pain deeper, because it leads to like, I'm ready to do something different. And those are the kinds of people that Rachel and I like to work with, as the people who's like ready to do something. We're not really interested in teaching people something and they're not ready to follow through. We're like very serious about the work we do, and we're selective about who we work with. So we like to look for people who's at that place where they've gotten to enough of this thing and they're ready to like try new things and see what happens, and trust that their soul is guiding to them something that's going to make them go to their next level of development.
Yeah, thank you for that. Right. Well, that was deep and very insightful and inspiration on emotional intelligence. But I'm guessing moving back to the script a tiny bit, see if that's okay. On like roots of inspiration more generally. So yeah, I kind of love inspiring events that spontaneously bring people together, make them feel like they're on the same team. Have you guys got an example of something in your own lives that you've experienced that just was so heart-meltingly bringing people together?
Yeah. When I was traveling with Jonathan in Costa Rica, we went to a community called Awake that was doing authentic relating.
Okay.
And I've noticed authentic relating to just be super powerful for opening people up and connecting. And it was really entertaining because the first round was easy. It's like, find someone in the room that you're attracted to and strike up a conversation with them. But then the second one was find someone you're repulsed by and go tell them why.
Oh, wow.
And it actually opened up really heart de-armoring conversation because that person was coming, admitting to a judgment. And we all had the context of like, our judgments are rooted in ourselves. And so really it was like this, I'm being vulnerable with something that I like struggle with you, and you're holding, and the other person holds space for that and talks them through it. And so there's a lot of ways of doing authentic relating. There's dozens upon dozens of authentic relating games, but that was just one instance that always stands out for me as really connective, and Govinda did a great job with that.
Great. Wow.
Yeah. I wanted to this makes me think of something back when I was doing my organizational development days. We used I was working with an organization, I believe it was like in a healthcare, and there was a lot of disharmony within the different departments. And we used a technique called appreciative inquiry by David Cooperrider. And it's instead of like focusing on like all the things that are wrong, which generates a lot of negative energy, we actually set up a bunch of exercises to first talk about like why are we working together and what's going well. And it built up all this like positive energy and momentum, so that then when we actually got in to some of the things that were disharmonious, there was a positive momentum, and they were like kind of like had this deep connection, and it eased in, and the solutions were just a lot more apparent. And so I thought that was a really good way of approaching some disharmony, is to actually focus on what's working.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. Because that was the unwritten reason for trying to do this podcast. It's just to create that bit of a forward momentum of togetherness and yeah, inspiration. Yeah, thanks for that. So people who are low on self-belief, have forgotten how to wave their own flag. Obviously, there's the deep emotional work that can be done, but it's any other kind of quicker ideas that people in that situation could consider just to start them to move forward?
As far as how to take that first step when you're feeling,
when we've got low self-worth, you're not feeling inspired, you've forgotten how to wave your own flag, in your low on self-worth, how to, maybe remember how amazing, at a deeper level you are.
Yeah. So one of the tools that really helped me when I was in that place was Gene Keys, which is one of Gene Keys, like your genetic genes. And it's 11 keys that basically unlock your latent energy or your creative spark. And it covers everything from like your activation sequence, which is life's work and purpose. And for me, part of why I felt like I was like more low energy on the regular was because I was playing around with all these possibilities of what I might become, and I wasn't ready to commit fully to any of them. And Gene Keys kind of dropped me into that more value essence of who I am. And so gave me a measuring stick to weigh my possibilities with, by dropping me into a deeper sense of who I am and what my inner compass is really pointing towards. So that's one thing that really helped me.
That's great. So yeah, we just recently interviewed Kelly Physic, who I know you know, and we were speaking about values, so touching on it again there. So yeah, this, helping people realize that they have values, a lot of people do realize that, but some people might have just got that lost that they've not got a deep connection to what their true values are. So yeah, that's Gene Keys. I looked that one up.
Yes.
So yeah, Gene Keys is great because it inspires you, what shows you your potential. And so I strongly endorse that. And the Human Design is another one also that talks about like what you're prepared to kind of to do, that you actually astrologically based on your date of birth, and that shows that you're your highest potential. But I actually want to talk about something else. I want to talk about what Donnie Epstein taught me, which is about energy. And that actually our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions are directly related to our energetic state, full stop. And so you're having a bunch of negative thoughts and feelings and stuckness. It's because your energy level's stuck at a certain spot. So the first thing is to actually start to be like, this isn't me. Stop. People think that they are their thoughts and their feelings and their emotions and sensations, and it's nonsense. We actually this like kind of witness. We just kind of, there's a part of us that's like never been born, never died. It's called the witness, where you're just observing everything, and it's affected by energy. So noticing you're having a lot of negative things. How about starting exercising? How about eating healthy? Too. Then Rachel and I, when we met you, Ian, in Tulum, Rachel and I were teaching at a conference there, a soulful conference, and teaching how people to get more into their souls. And what we help people see is that Donnie helped people see there are two different kinds of people. Is a new distinction I've not heard from anywhere else. Is that some people actually were created by spirit in the future, and some people were created by spirit in the past. And we think everybody kind of was baited by the past, and our life comes forward. But what Donnie identified through his work is that there's a intelligence beyond time that's kind of creating things. And it's almost like spirit was like, I could try and start from the beginning and get my ideal ending, but maybe I could just actually also at some point I find out like that's difficult. Why don't I just, for efficiency, effectiveness, I can just create my ideal ending, and I can have all those people who's going to help that transformation happen, that their backstory just fills it. So once you identify whether you're internal, which is something from the past, or an external, or you're from the future, you can align with your energetic way. And so the people who's from the future, they like to like focus on the future. And when they start focusing on the past, their energy goes down, and they like to put their hands up in the air. So like one technique you can easily identify whether they use from the future or the past is a hand position. Like, so if you're listening out there, you could put your hands up in the air, and you could start just talking and saying what comes to mind, and what are you thinking and feeling. Like, I'm feeling excited and ready to bring my gifts to the world. And then there's another position called an internal position, where you put your hands over your heart, and you close your eyes, and you talk, and you just talk about what energy you have here. And like for me right now, I have this kind of like peace and harmony and contentment. And what you do is you ask yourself, what is your energy difference between the two? And while both positions are comfortable for me, I actually feel more enthusiastic and excited when I have my hands up. And so that's like helps me to realize that I need to like, if I focus on the future I'm here to bring, then I'm more in my higher energies. And if you use the opposite, if you're an internal, you actually get more excited by thinking about your successes in the past and what you learned and how you want to bring that forward. So Rachel and I's helps people figure out their energetic patterns, like that one and some other ones, and so that they can get aligned with their natural energies. At the end of the day, a lot of this work is about alignment. Like Rachel mentioned, Gene Keys, and I just mentioned Human Design. We help people see what spirit actually intended them to do. And then what we're really good at is transformation, the process of transformation, all these different modalities. So we can help them see, okay, you're over here. And like, Gene Keys actually identifies the low and the middle and the high points. And we can help say, okay, we'll use here. That's fine. But your own hero's journey is to get up to these higher parts. And if you do these different techniques, you can manifest them if you were willing to put the time and effort. it's out there, people like us are out there to help guide them, and we can help them tap into their own wisdom so that they can be guided themselves. So anyways, that's
yeah, no, that's a it's your own hero's journey. Yeah, it's there if you want it, and you're prepared to put the work in. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it can be effortless and fun when you attach to like higher energies. It doesn't have to, it can seem like a lot of energy and laborious when you're at a low energy and you're not feeling like, oh, I got to do all this work. But actually, you get your energy up, it can be fun. We can teach people look at their language and be more precise. And we're always manifesting our reality with our words and observer. And so there's a lot of little subtleties that we can save people a lot of time. I mean, I wish I had met me, when I was starting this, because, I learned a lot of stuff along the path that would have been helpful to know way earlier. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Now, I don't think I've actually mentioned at all in this discussion that you guys are a couple. Yeah, so, and you are relationship alchemists as part of, this suite of modalities that you help people with. Can you expand on that a little bit more? Or, the relationship space.
So relationship alchemists, it's the alchemy that we're doing connects people more directly to love and themselves and the parts of themselves that need to come into wholeness, or the I, which is the individual work and the person you are when you're completely alone, the you, which is your relational self, and the version of you are when you're around other people, and then the other, which is the collective expression of who you are, which is the frequency of what you connect to in the media or when you're interacting with your community. And relationships to each of those parts of ourselves are what we're alchemizing.
Okay.
And so the relationships with your loved ones definitely even looks like couples work on some of the retreats that we do, and love and communication codes. So there's a lot of different ways in which your relationships can be alchemized, because it's not just your relationship to these parts, it's also your relationship to life itself, and realizing the way that you're orienting. Are you really believing that life is happening for you, not to you? Are you approaching the world as co-creating with you or victimizing you? Yeah. And we really want to, just catalyze people to take power of their own perception and really choose the life that they want to live through that.
Yeah, Rachel's kind of breaking up these three categories: the I, you, other. And I just want to connect it with energy. The more you in alignment, those are the two words that we at the center of the work we're doing. So as you have, and so like I work is like parts work within us, like there's our controller, our ego defense parts, our, part of our soul. And how do we get into like a relationship with them where they're maximally energized, when they're like shining at their brightest? We help people do that kind of work. Yeah, and one of the things that Rachel just mentioned, this we're working on this couples retreat thing, and we're just really inspired to work with both individuals, but also couples who both want to work together as a couple on their work to achieve their highest self, not only as an individual, but as a unit. There's actually, in the human design, you can actually look at when you put two designs together, like what it looks like. So there's like, we talked about the one level superpowers is like when you're wounded and you kind of focus on something, that's one. And then there's another level of superpower that is unlocked when you kind of deal with your own kind of weaknesses and turn that into strength. You got to develop a bunch of skills. But there's like an even third layer about couples. When you get two people, or more if it's like you're polyamorous or something, but at least two or a couple where you kind of mash into yourself together and lining at a higher level, then that's like another superpower. But there's actually relational codes. So that's where the U is like, how do people like get along, and whether it's love or just communication, like it could be like the love languages is like different codes. about how people like to be like your C language is like something like that. And there's also communication things like checking in, and anyway, there's like a zillion different codes in that. And then the other one is like another whole thing, which is there's like metaphysics. There's like actual spiritual laws that we kind of know about the nature of reality. And when you stop fighting them and you align with them, your energy goes up. You want to work with reality as it is. I've been studying integral theory with Ken Wilber for like 10, 15 years. And it has a bunch of distinctions that help you see reality as like through some developmental lenses. Not only like an individual, but like how the body works and how systems work and culture works. And when you can start deconstructing reality through those kinds of lenses, things make a lot more sense and you can actually make change happen. I had to use all those kind of perspective lenses when I was doing my organizational development work, because I was working with not just individuals, but systems. And you have to look at the interface between the individual and the system as well. So we have a lot of deep knowledge in that and help people get into right relationship with that. Like, for example, a lot of people frustrated with the current state of the world. They're looking at all this polarization and this COVID-19. But from a different perspective, this is kind of exactly what we need, because there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the world systems and how our culture's working. And that's a good place to be, to have like a really huge change. So not only do we have that, but we've got people like ourselves and us three and other people around the world bringing higher level codes and coming together in communities. Like we were in a New Earth mastermind, which is just basically a bunch of people who want to talk about how to make a better world. So just a catchphrase, I think, from the Bible or something. But basically what that means is we got a lot of people who's bringing new codes, new ways of being in these different areas. At the same time, the mainstream's kind of people's getting dissatisfied. That's like a perfect cocktail for major transformation. So a lot of people might be getting depressed about what's happened. I actually see it as super awesome. Like we've got the perfect cocktail of the good codes coming up and people getting dissatisfied. Because a lot of people don't really change until they're really like what they're currently doing is not working at all. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, go on, Rachel.
Relationship to other is also just realizing that we're connected to everything and that we're not singular or separated in this human experience. And so it can also look like having a real relationship with nature, and in the way that we observe reality as interacting with us, like seeing a bird flying right up to us as a sign of like higher level energies wanting to come be with us, and like different kinds of signs and symbols and synchronicities. The idea of synchronicity as like an intentional message for you, instead of just like, ooh, a really magical coincidence happening. But like, no, synchronicity is like the world is trying to speak to you. And so when we really connect to the sense of everything that is around us and interacting with us is also a part of us, because we appear to be this like speck in the universe right now, but all of the current matter in the universe came from one big bang. And so at one point it was all us. It just really opens up a new relationship with reality and a new way to be in the world.
Yeah, and the synchronicity thing, someone, a couple of years told me about that. You know, if you're having more synchronicities, it maybe means you're a bit more aligned. And, you know, I've not had tons, but there's been 2 or 3 now that it's like, wait a minute, that, no, I can't believe that just too big a coincidence. Yeah, so it's, nice to hear that.
Yeah, I wanted to just, what Rachel's saying is so important, because there's a lot of people think about like how he's always projecting, and we talked about this earlier, about you're projecting your things you haven't resolved yet onto other people, but actually is also projecting more like positive things, hearts, and the whole environment's like talking to you. And when you're open to that and you kind of got the different code books to interpret it, it really opens things up and things are more validating and it really feels inspiring. And Like he's really aligned with everything, and that really can change people's momentum. And you start, usually spirit starts, you know, what I noticed was I was having like zero transpersonal experiences until I really just got to this place where it's like, I'm going to manifest my higher self. Like I literally made a commitment and I was going to do it, whatever it took. And then I actually started following through with that. Like it just wasn't me saying it, like I was doing it. And when that happened, those combinations of my commitment plus that, magic started to happen. And I'd read it in books afterwards, but it's like different when you have your own personal experiences. So I would say to people out there, deeply trust, man, the universe is actually here to work for you. And when you make a commitment to align with your highest version, so not only you can be happy, but you can give your gifts out to serve other people, that's when the magic really happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to repeat that, what you, beautiful line you said. So, you know, that your whole surroundings are talking to you, and they can all be an inspiration, basically, if you open the relevant bit of perception up. Yeah, that's beautiful. Quick fire inspiration. So I'll do, there's 5 questions we normally do, just can be quick answers of your 5 most inspiring separate things. So I'll do Jonathan first, if that's okay. So your most inspiring film?
One that comes to mind is Kundin. I love that movie because it's the story of the Dalai Lama and how he kind of broke free. And it's just also Martin Scorsese. It's really filmed well. The score is amazing. It's just inspiring on so many levels.
Okay, and you, Rachael, film?
Inception. Just because them trusting the audience to understand that many levels of reality was really inspiring.
I've seen neither, so I definitely need to watch. So.
Oh, Inception's powerful. Definitely.
Your most inspiring aspect of nature?
The way that light ripples off of moving water. I feel like I'm getting suntan from beneath me, and I'm bringing in all these light codes. It's great. It's mesmerizing.
For me, it's actually mountains. I actually was living back on the East Coast in Boston, and I came out to the Colorado Rockies for a retreat, actually with Donnie Epstein, and I saw these giant mountains, and I was like, just fell in love. There's something magical about the mountains and the stability of the earth. I was just like, my soul needed that energy, and I decided to move out here.
Right.
Yeah.
Your most inspiring aspect of design or style?
So when I heard design originally, I was thinking like, oh, like the Vesica Pisces, which is like the interlooping circles, or Machikana. When you say like stylistic design, I'm really into color theory. I guess I could say that.
Yeah.
Realizing how the energy of a color is impacting us.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'm getting like a combination of like psychedelics and like spirituality kind of mixed together. Like I have this jacket of a Buddha, but it's also got this like trippy energy vibes. I kind of like it because it's like speaking to like deeper mystical truths and the mystery of everything. And it's also kind of like adventurous and colorsome. And I feel really inspired by those. Imagery.
Visionary art in general. It's new cultural wave. I love it. Collected a lot of it.
Great.
Very fantastical.
Your most inspiring song, what do you sing before you go out?
Yeah.
Both Rachael and I is really into music, so that's a tough one. One that comes to mind is a song called Renunciation by the Secret Chiefs 3, and it's just got a very layered music, and it's like really uplifting. Brings a lot of sounds together. Definitely check it out if you've never heard it before.
Yeah.
Indian Summer by Jai Wolf.
Yeah.
So uplifting. Most listened to song of 2018.
And I've got lots of inspiring listening and watching to do. And final and quick fire inspiration is most inspiring aspect of travel.
I spent like twice in the last year. I went to Costa Rica, and I love that place because it's got like a lot of cool healing energy, and there's like volcanoes, and there's ocean, and there's jungle, and there's like wild animals, and there's a lot of cool people doing spiritual work. And both times I went there, I had super life altering experiences. So strongly endorse Costa Rica.
So diversity, I'm kind of hearing that too.
Yeah, diversity. I like diversity a lot, and color and depth.
For me, travel, my favorite thing about traveling is the fact that you meet people that are gathering for a common purpose or a common value.
Yes.
Instead of everyday life where you meet them because they're physically around you. So I feel like the amount of inspiring connections that I make really go up, and my synchronicity really feels like it goes up too when I travel. And that's always has this air of fun and mystery.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites is traveling. Yeah, you just highlighted one of the reasons. I didn't realize I liked it that much. Yeah. So the last couple of questions are, what is most right in the world?
I have a potentially unpopular answer. The internet is actually like connecting people in a way that we never had before, and it's creating more choice and more possibility, because you can before, if you had this sense like, oh, I kind of want to be this unique thing, I've never seen it before, then you're just like, I gotta set that down and go back to being a blacksmith because that's what I know. But in an age of technology, we can literally be whatever we imagine and find someone on the internet to mirror that for us, so we can build the self-belief to become it. And I just think that's super powerful, and it has us in a more collective mindset. And that makes self-work more important than ever. But I think having that unity orientation of like, there's a place where we all are, powerful.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of said earlier about the dynamics of crazy change that I thought.
I think that I was thinking that you've already given us.
Probably be the thing I would say, and it's enabled by what Rachel's saying is about the internet. The internet brings like-minded people together, but also brings all this esoteric spirituality stuff. There's like people all over the world has been studying like the most esoteric stuff, and they've been putting it together, and they're like in their own little corner, and most people aren't open to it. But if you have an open mind, there's like so much crazy cool stuff out there. Like another thing that I got into for a while where I was doing is like there's this guy called Sifu Jones, and Chi Energy Heals, and he like studied all these really esoteric Asian Chinese people, the people who like move their hand and they shoot people across the room. Yeah. And you can like for $100 a month, you can study with him and get all those cool techniques. And there's just a lot of cool stuff out there that for the people who want to get out of the mainstream idea and are just open to be like, try out new things. It's all available as Rachel saying, is the internet.
Such a tapestry, such a banquet in the world of exploration. It's beautiful. Yeah, thank you for that. And what's the next book on your reading list?
I'm actually reading through the Gene Keys book right now because I've already deep dove with my own 11 keys, but I'm ready to just learn all the archetypal heroes' journeys of reality. And just anytime I sense someone, immediately I can feel what a greater potential is. And that really inspires me to interact with life on a like more jazzed level. So I'm going through the book right now. It's quite a few. It's like, but I'll get there.
Yeah, it's a great book. I'm going through with her, but I'll pick a different book. I just bought a new book today on Audible. It's This Is Your Mind on Plant Medicine, and it's by Michael Pollan. And this is his second book he's written on plant medicine. And basically, I have discovered in my own journey that people who really want to accelerate their journey, that plant medicine, when used in the right set and setting, right way and right people, can accelerate people's journey. And he's kind of mainstreaming it because he's a mainstream author. He's got a lot of bestsellers, so I'm really appreciating it. And he's going at it through a real diligent, scientific, and experimental way, and talking about the risks is Rachel and I both seen a lot of people do this stuff and it didn't go well for them, and people had no experiences, and people had life-altering experiences. And we really want to help people learn how to use these ways in a safe way, but it can really accelerate their personal growth. It's definitely an area of deep passion, and something that we utilize in our work with clients for those who are open to it. And I also want to point out, you don't have to use plant medicine to do this work. It just can accelerate things if you're open to it. But there's other ways of experiencing altered states, different modalities, like works and stuff. There's something called like a harmonic egg that Rachel and I tried, where you kind of like sit in this hour in this egg, and it plays like music and sounds and light, and it also gives you an altered state experience. So there's other ways for people who's not interested in that, which is understandable.
Yeah, there's a couple of people I've sat with a little while, and they've been able to bring me out of frenzy into a deep peace. Yeah, so I know. Yeah, they definitely. Yeah, people out there can saying that to give people the knowledge that there's ways out there that you can bring you to a better state of consciousness.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's not talked about a lot of that is integration. Like, it's one thing to have like an experience, a peak experience, but if you don't really know how to make meaning of it, it can disorient you and be more harmful than good. So it's important to have people to talk to who understand that landscape, who understand how the mind works, who understand how altered states works, and how to help people take that piece of wisdom they got and integrate it to their life so they move forward towards their higher self. So very important part of that process. And we definitely endorse anybody who's thinking about using that kind of stuff to have a community, a coach, or some sort of people who are deeply knowledgeable in wisdom that can help integrate that into a functional way that's serving your higher best interests.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect way to end. Thank you so much for amazingly deep and inspirational content.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, and people want to learn more about us. We have a website called relationshipalchemist.com. That's going to have a list of our podcast, which is currently getting to publish it later soon. But yeah, it's going to have our podcast on there. It'll have about how to get a hold of us. But you can actually get a hold of us through email. I'm Jonathan at relationshipalchemist.com.
And I'm Rachael at relationshipalchemist.com. RACHAEL.
Yeah.
Yeah, JONATH.
So you guys are going to, you're launching a podcast, or you already have a podcast, did you say?
Well, we're going to have two things. We're going to have an area where we're going to list the podcasts we've been on, but yes, we are going to launch our own podcast in the near future as well.
Yeah, we're planning on covering some of these different modalities and comparing and contrasting their effects, as we talked about, that being something where we like to be able to make recommendations for people. So yeah, we're going to be going into many modalities. I've already got a list of 55 plus that I've pulled up, and he's still typing his. So we're going to go deep.
Yeah. And modalities could include like people we've worked with, or paradigms we've worked with, and these different kind of codes. And we're not only going to talk about them individually and the pros and cons and like when to use one or what, but also like how you stack them. Stacking is a big thing Rachel says into. Intelligent or coherent stacking, because you put a couple things together and it can either go negative or wrong. So we're kind of like, we're both very experimental, both individually and then together. And so we're kind of like trying to save people work. We're like, hey, you don't have to run all these experiments. We've already done a lot of deep research of these different things. Not that we don't want to hear about your experiments. We're always talking to other experimental people. But for those people who want to like, say, these people who've kind of actually tried these different things out in different combinations and show how they work together, and we can add a lot of value to people who's got the right motivation and want to get that wisdom and kind of fast track their development to their higher self.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you're very welcome.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. You asked great questions.
Cheers. So,
Cheers.
you've given me like the monster amount of content, but if you have got another 5 minutes, I've got the really cool 4 questions for I'm going to either put on the end of the podcast or at some point in the future to go in the supporters group. If you've got another 5 minutes,
Go for it, yeah.
What is your biggest secret to success?
Positive perception witnessing. It's so key. If you realize you're being negative, do what you need to do for your energy so that you can put that optimism back on. You know, without optimism, you're bleeding momentum. You're bleeding energy instead of building momentum. It's key.
Wow, really powerful answer.
Yeah. So I always say this secret sauce is to first learn to train your mind to see everything as energy that can be interpreted from multiple perspectives, and then learn to choose perspectives that are higher energy, like Rachel saying, more positive perception witnessing. So when you're aware, acknowledge, accept everything as an energy, and then you can be like, oh, is this really serving me, or is there a higher way of doing it? Or like actually letting your mind go quiet and use something what's called unbound energy, that some part of you actually knows what the next level is. Like we have this optimizer of intelligence that's inherent there. Sometimes when you let your ego defenses get out of the way, and then just higher wisdom just comes naturally.
Yeah, and I feel like that is almost the delineation point between being able to show up as your higher self and just being your everyday self. Is, are you caught in the story of this singular life that you are, or are you holding enough perspective breadth that like there's almost a you outside of time that is weighing the options of how you could act and react, and responding to life from that place?
Then how to use fearlessness in the right way? Because fear can help you stay safe, but it doesn't always help when you're trying to think big. How do you use fearlessness in the right way?
So this is a very specific example, but what I'm thinking about is cold plunges. Have you ever heard of cold plunges before?
Yeah. The Wim Hof I've been doing for about a year. Well, the cold showers mainly that. But I've the odd cold bath.
So,
that's what you're about.
Some people, they just throw themselves in the water, and it's like, bam, like shocking your system into building a new tolerance or a new availability. But I'm working on, I actually put my toes in really slowly, and then I feel it like creep through every nerve of my body, and I listen for when my body feels unsafe.
Right.
And I stop there, and then I build the availability for that to be deeper every time I get in the water. And so for me, that's just kind of a direct compare and contrast of like, not that either of those ways are right or wrong, but just when you're playing with the edge of fearlessness and you're trying to cultivate that, you can launch yourself in and prove to yourself that you're safe going past the edge of your fear, or you can actually build the self-trust that makes that edge move forward more slowly, but in a way that isn't going to break the first time reality shows you real danger. And another way that I do this is through fired flow arts, right? And every time I light a prop on fire and I dance with it, I'm only doing the moves that I know I can do safely, but I'm watching that edge expand over time. And so that is a way to be with danger without being reckless with my fearlessness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about fear and fearlessness. So this kind of ability when you start to notice fear, like maybe to like, be like, hey, this is an opportunity time to do some really deep spiritual work. And ask yourself, is this like legitimate? Like, am I going to die if I do this? Am I going to get some sort of illness? Is this going to like totally mess up my whole life? Like, what is it going on? Is this a rational or irrational fear? I mean, because there are legitimate things to be fearful of. There's like a python snake about to bite me. I probably should move away, poisonous one, something like that. So we want to get clear on this. And now when you actually get to some fears that are irrational, that there's some sort of wound going on there back there, especially if you notice it and it comes up, if a theme comes up, you start doing this on a regular basis, you start to see, oh, I'm having the same irrational fear over and over and over and over again. That's a spiritual edge. And you know that there's something you need to purify with. There's some sort of emotional wound that you didn't feel. So that's a gift. And you can use that to inspire you. You're like, some people could be thinking, oh, I'm in fear and this is like terrible, but you could be like, oh wait, I'm in fear, and now I know it's an irrational fear, And once you start to see it as a pattern, then you start to like being like, oh, I know what you're about, you know, and then you can later do some other kind of work and see how it's connected to some wounds of your past. And then the fearlessness just kind of comes, or you're in alignment with appropriate risk taking, I guess. But the universe is working for you, well, ultimately. And one of the ways it's working for you is to kind of show you the patterns that are holding you back. So you can make fear your friend in this way if he's using this kind of a process.
Yeah, it's just not to push your fear so hard that it gets quieter, but to like respect what your body is telling you and watch that fear melt and then take the step.
Beautiful. Can you recall an event that made you laugh uncontrollably?
Well, like a few of them.
So I am thinking of when I went road tripping with my best friend Kara, because I had a conversion van when I was younger. We had parked at some deserty southeast state, and we were hearing coyotes in the underbrush, and we both needed to use the bathroom. And so it was like this like funny moment of like pushing the other person out and like, no, you take the risk. No, you take the risk. And just like us being completely silly about our fear, I think is what made it so funny to me, is because like, yes, there was something to be afraid of, but there was also this sense of like, we're amplifying it within ourselves and we can laugh at how silly we are.
Brilliant.
I actually thought of one that was, I tend to find things that are absolutely hilarious where just something just doesn't make sense. It's out of place. And there's almost like a surrender to it. So I had an experience when I was doing ayahuasca once, and I was going to go to the toilet. It was like an outdoor toilet, and the whole circle was right out in front of me. And the door, every time I sat down to poop, the door kept opening, and I kept like, pulling on my shorts and closing it, and it kept opening. And people could come up and slam it like, hey, don't do that in front of us. And eventually it happened so many times in a row, I just had to surrender. Like I was like dealing with the vulnerability, and I just was like laughing at the whole craziness of the situation.
So this was actually happening, or was this kind of a
not actually happened to me? Yeah. And then nobody else had this problem with this outhouse the whole time. Like everyone else was like, hey, work fine for me. I don't know. So it's like also helped me to be like, that's not an accident, because I was working with vulnerability that night, and like being okay with being vulnerable. Because like I talked about earlier in the interview where I was teased and I was feeling humiliated, and Spears was like, hey, you can be humiliated and it can be okay. I remember just like laughing at the whole situation about silliness, so just surrendering that sometimes weird shit happens, circumstances come together, and we don't look good, whatever. So it's good to meet that with humor rather than like horror.
And that the other interview, just in case listeners want to pick up on that interview of yours that I listened to get some of this content, some of these learnings from, that was Matrix Breakers, is it? An episode of the podcast called Matrix Breakers. Perfect. Thanks. And the very last one is, and maybe you've alluded to this a little bit before, but for you to access your creative mindset, which is the opposite to the victim mindset, what's your top tip for that? I know ultimately it's a part of a much, much, much longer, deeper journey to reveal your higher self that you've said, but just for people who either are or are not on that journey, anything that you can say to tap into your own creation?
One thing that comes to mind to me is like a combination. I kind of talked about this energy thing that's important to it, but there's another piece that my partner here, Rachael, is also really good at, is this environmental magic. So like I actually find that if my desk is messy and like my environment's not conducive to it, I'm not ultimately into it. So like if I'm like gonna like do some deep creative work, I like to get everything kind of organized and like my desk pretty. This is like if I'm doing computer work, but I mean you can do creative in a lot of settings, and then just get really focused on that thing, and then like just get my energy up. and get into like a playful place, and just like let it flow, just trust. And like I also find like I like to divide up, like there are two phases to the creation or pieces. Like there's a part where you just like free flowing, like I call it like a divergent stage, where you just let the ideas come out, or drawings, and you just free flowing. You just don't critique it all. You just, because that sometimes screws up your flow. And I get all that stuff out of me, and then I'll go to another stage, like a refinement stage. It's like, okay, I got this out there. I know I want to take it next level. And so I like to divide those up too. I find that finds my it really accelerates my creativity.
Thank you.
The first trick for going to victim to creator is just to really hone into what your self-care looks like. Because I think for a lot of people, self-care can be eating even, but what's those higher vibration versions? Like what kind of movement really wakes up my body? Because when there's trapped energy in the body, we're going to feel more in our victim because there's restriction. So like stretching and moving, and then what Jonathan was saying is setting the stage for what you want to arrive, and then trusting it will come because you're creating this perfect happening of a moment. And so if I fight this writer's block, I might just stare at a screen for an hour. But if I get up and I'm just like, oh, the scene's not set yet, and I make a tea and I get a soft blanket and I come back, then I have a second chance.
Yeah.
So working like with the resistance instead of fighting it.
Yeah, I think one thing Rachel's talking about stretching, but people I think underuse stretching and massages. I think when people's like we're sitting at the desk all the time, always getting in this weird position, that we don't even realize how tight our body is and how much restrictive it is when the blood's not flowing well and our muscles are tight. So that's not talked a lot about, but I actually am a huge fan of stretching, yoga, massage. Once I got into that, I really changed my whole energy, and with higher energy is more creativity.
Perfect. Thank you for massive tsunami of inspiration.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we're inspired by you and your podcast. It's a good idea what you're doing. I think you're really going to help a lot of people.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just